Hey guys, welcome to the Video Express, where we dust off old VHS tapes and discuss all things horror, sci-fi, and exploitation. I'm Matt.
And I'm Katie.
Let's get things rolling. Katie, tell our fine listeners what movie we are spotlighting on tonight's show.
Well, Matt, I am delighted to say that we are spotlighting The Howling 2, aka The Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf, aka Steerbo Werewolf Bitch. This is the 1985 sequel to the classic The Howling. This sequel was directed by Felipe Mora, and yeah, it's interesting.
It's very interesting and probably one of the most it's a very hated film because a lot of people, of course, love the original one so much, as do I. Um, but I we'll get into it a little bit more later, but I will first and foremost say that I fucking love Howling 2. So I can't wait to get into it a little bit deeper. So before we dive into it, tell us what's going on today in the cinema world.
Well, even though 2020 has overall been a garbage year for everyone, there's actually a lot of really cool new horror coming out, specifically on the Shudder streaming app. So, you know, quick plug, not like we're sponsored by them or anything, but if you're into horror movies and you need more all the time, I definitely recommend getting a Shudder subscription. So I have a couple of movies I want to talk about today. The first one is a Shudder original called Blood Vessel. So this one came out, I believe, in October of this year, and it is about Nazi vampires, and not just
Now,
any
is this
Nazi
the one?
vampires.
Is
Oh,
is this the
sorry.
one where they're on? Oh no, you're fine. Is this the one where they're like on a big freighter or something like that? A
Yes.
big ship, like a warship or something. Okay,
Yes, so it takes place in late 1945, and they kind of intro at the beginning that the Nazis at this point kind of know they're losing, and they're kind of just getting desperate, so they start bombing Allied hospital vessels. So you start with a group of survivors from this vessel, consisting of like nurses, like a nurse, a doctor, some soldiers who were there in the hospital, and they've escaped on this raft, and they come across an abandoned Nazi vessel, and they go up there
oh,
for shelter. They actually don't realize it's abandoned at first until they get on the ship just trying to get off the raft, and then they discover that everyone is gone. Um,
right.
and eventually, they discover that there are vampires on board, but not just any vampires. Like these are like straight up like vampires, like strigoi, like old school bat people. So it has some really great practical effects, really great makeup, and it's just fun. Um, Unfortunately, if you're hoping to see a bunch of Nazis get wrecked, there really aren't any Nazis in this one because they've all died by the time they get there. But the vampire
Oh, that's a
effects
bummer.
makes up for it. Yeah. So
Right.
it's a really fun romp. I'm a fan. So
Yeah,
I
I've
would.
not seen the movie. I've not seen it yet, but I've seen the trailer, and I believe it was like a maybe a poster or whatever. And I saw it was like you said, like a really cool bat creature vampire on the cover, and I think it was like a swastika or something like
Yeah.
beneath the logo. So my hopes were that they were like Nazi vampires.
That's what
Um,
I was hoping for too. I was thinking it was going to be a little bit like that movie Overlord that came out a couple of years ago,
right.
which is also a great fun movie and does have Nazis getting wrecked. But this is
Right.
fine. They weren't needed for this movie. I think just having just the mere presence of just being on a Nazi ship is just terrifying to begin with. So I think it's a really great setting
Right.
for this. So yeah, I definitely recommend that one. Another one that I have on the list here also a Shudder original. It's called The Cleansing Hour, and this is a great exorcism kind of gore fest. It's very fun. It's about a this group that consists of a priest, well, sort of a priest. He's like a celebrity priest, and he and his friends
Hmm.
have they do an hourly live stream every week where they do exorcisms on the air, but they're totally fake. Like it's completely staged. It's actors, it's makeup. But they have this huge following. They have like millions of people that watch this every week, and they think that it's real. So it's fake
Okay, so
until it
they're
isn't.
doing it. Okay, okay.
Yeah, like so the the people who are working on the show, they all know it's it's just bullshit, and they're all making it up for entertainment and for money. But then they actually encounter a real possessed person, and the demon kind of takes the entire show hostage and is like, if you take us off the air, I'll kill everyone, basically. So they have to keep streaming.
So it's
So
kind of like a riff on Zach Baggins or whatever the hell that guy's name is
yes.
from yeah, from that haunted show or whatever. I don't
Ghost
know what the fuck it's
Adventures,
called.
yeah.
Ghost of it.
It's
There was like, I remember watching like Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters International, but then like
same.
after those two shows there was like 1,000 imitators where I was like, all right, they never found any fucking thing, so I just give up. But
Yeah,
yeah, so
they
Zach
just wanted to
Baggins.
wear like Ed Hardy shirts and yell at ghosts and like flex their muscles.
uh yeah, so if it's a riff on that and it's an exorcism involved, I'll probably give that one a shot for sure.
It's really fun. I mean, and it's definitely like I would call this like Catholic horror because it definitely leans into like the Catholic lore of exorcism and demons and whatnot. So it's pretty
Gotcha.
fun. Um, and then another one on my list here. This is a Netflix movie called His House. This one came out pretty recently
Oh Lord.
too. This one is pretty heavy. Like I wouldn't call this a fun one, but it's very scary. It is about a refugee couple from South Sudan. They flee to England from like their war torn village, and they get put in government housing. So like right off the bat, they're just already not in a great situation. Like their neighbors are super racist to them, and they're just like trying to fit in and adapt and get jobs and start a new life here, but they're just like haunted by this trauma of leaving their home, and there's a great sense
Mhm.
of like family loss here. And to make matters worse, the house that they moved into has ghosts in the walls.
So they're getting fucked on all ends.
Yes. And it turns out, I'm not going to spoil anything, but the paranormal activity in their home may have followed them from South Sudan. But that's all I'll say.
Oh, okay.
So I
I
definitely
actually
recommend that one.
I actually did see the trailer briefly the other night, and I'm not a huge made for Netflix horror fan because 9 times out of 10, their build is so scary that people had to turn them off, halfway through. When in reality, they turned them off halfway through because they were fucking terrible.
Right.
Um, but no, I watched the trailer to this one, and I was actually shocked because within the first like 5 seconds, I was like, oh, Netflix trying to be Jordan Peele and trying to do like an Us rip off. But then like
Mm-hmm.
10 seconds later, I'm like, oh shit, all right, this actually looks kind of
Yeah.
cool. But I'm glad that you explained a little bit more of the backstory because the trailer is it's not that it's misleading, it's that you don't exactly know what it's about. Like all you
Right.
see is just like heartbreak and weird shit, and you don't know exactly. And I don't like when trailers give the whole movie away, but I also don't like when trailers don't really give you a bone either and let you know what the story's about. So I wasn't for sure about this one. I thought it looked competently made, but now that you say that, I'll definitely probably give this one a shot.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. It's like I said, it's not fun like the Howling 2 is fun. But it's definitely, if you're especially if you're like me, I have such a soft spot for a good haunted house story. I love ghost and supernatural shit. So yeah, it's great. Um, and then the final movie that I just wanted to spotlight today, it's actually based on a trailer that you sent to me, Matt. This is an upcoming Russian sci-fi horror movie called The Super Deep. Now this isn't
Yeah.
out yet, so this is the only one on my list today that I have not seen yet, but I did watch the trailer, and I can tell you that it is about a group of scientists who are going to investigate the world's deepest, I believe they called it borehole. which I'd
Mhm.
never heard of. I didn't know what that was. But it's just like a really deep hole, basically. And they go down into
Is it a hole in isn't it a hole in, like, the ocean floor or something? Or
it's here, I'll tell you exactly what it is. A borehole, excuse my loud keyboard, is a deep, narrow hole made in the ground, especially to locate water or oil. So, I mean, from the
oh,
trailer, it kind of seemed like they were like in the ocean. It was kind of giving me like that, like underwater vibes, like that movie Underwater. But I really don't know what else this is about other than they seem to find something really icky. And I saw a couple of
right.
glimpses of some really gnarly special effects in this trailer. So I'm very excited to see
I
that.
wish
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
I wish I could remember the name of the effects group that did the effects for this movie because, I actually saw this trailer. I'm a member of a Facebook group, that's just called Practical Effects Group, because fuck CGI.
Right.
But
Exactly.
somebody in that group yeah, somebody in that group had posted, this trailer, and of course, like, two things that you're going to automatically hook me with is practical effects and like gooey, like the thing type creatures.
Yes.
So as soon as I saw that, like it hooked me, and I started doing looking a little bit more into it, and like it's a Russian made film, and this effects company I believe are as well Russian, but these guys like there was a little behind the scene video, and it literally looked like the heyday of watching like the old KNB effects behind the scenes videos, like
Mm-hmm.
them in their shop, sculpting and pouring, the mold and shit, and like it was the first time that I have felt like my young self, watching the old like behind the scenes videos, and I stress videos because I watched them on VHS. You would have to wait until the fucking movie was over with and the end credits before it would go. Almost like Full Moon Pictures used to have Video Zone, and they'd go into like how they made shit. And then just watching this video of these guys making stuff, like it felt like old school days, and seeing that it was all practical really hooked me. So I can't wait for that one to hit, to hit here in the States. I do believe that it has already been released in Russia.
Yeah, I
I
think
think maybe
so.
like a
And Shutter has
yeah.
bought the rights to it, so it'll be coming to Shutter
Oh
sometime
shit!
in early 2021. So I'll be looking out
Awesome.
for
I
that.
love that's
A-
the
And
the best
I
platform for it to be on.
Absolutely. And I think, the trailer does a really good job at not revealing too much, but it revealed enough for me to see that it is definitely going to be a goopy, gooey, like body horror thing. Like, I think whatever they find down there infects people and turns them into something nasty. And body horror specifically, makes my skin crawl. I mean, I love it because I like to see the effects,
Right.
but that's one of the things that gets under my skin a little bit. So I'm very much looking forward to see what that's all about.
Yeah, it's very Cronenberg meets the thing. So it looks really cool.
Yeah,
All right, well, so enough of talking about what's going on now. Why don't we get to our movie of the night, Howling 2, aka Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf, aka Howling 2, Sterba, Werewolf Bitch. Um, First and foremost, let's just get this out of the way. I have seen this movie, no exaggeration, at the very least, 500 times. I
wow.
passionately love this movie. However, Katie, this is your first time viewing.
Yes.
So what are your first thoughts on Howling 2?
So I'd like to start by kind of setting the scene here. So I, up until last night, I had never even seen the first Howling. It's always been on my radar as a classic. So I'm really glad I had, an excuse to fire it up and watch it. But I decided that I couldn't, in good faith, discuss the sequel without seeing the first part in full. So I did a double
Right.
feature of the Howling, followed by the Howling 2, and the whiplash that I experienced going from this one, from the first one to this one, was insane. I mean, I kind of knew just based on the posters, the title, You know, just just calling it Your Sister is a Werewolf is so campy and delightful. I knew it was going to be a totally different vibe from the first one, and I was not disappointed. This is very you know, it's just 80s to the max. It's super campy, it's super cheesy. These are like the horniest werewolves I've ever seen. I just, you know, it's a bit of a mess and we'll get into it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was like cackling throughout and just completely entertained the entire time.
It's funny that you said the whiplash from watching part one to part two, and all I could think about was it's like you going to the store and pointing at the Howling and saying, "Mom, I want the Howling," and your mom saying, "We've got the Howling at home," and when you get home, it's part two.
Yeah, I, you
But
know, as soon as I saw Christopher Lee's name on this cast list, I was like, I don't know. And again, we'll get into it a little bit later, but I'm just like, I don't know how they bribed this man to be in this movie.
well, I've got some interesting facts about that actual thing. I'll bring up here in a little bit,
Oh,
but
fantastic.
let's just get this out of the way. I love this movie wholeheartedly. I'm not lying when I say it's probably top five favorite werewolf movies.
Yeah.
Um, but let's make one thing perfectly clear: it is in by no means a good fucking movie. It is.
No, it's not.
It's not good,
It's a
and I
beautiful
think that's
mess.
why I love it. It's that's the perfect way of explaining it. It's a beautiful mess. I like that. Um, and like also like this is our first episode, so I feel like most people that's going to be listening right now is people that know us.
Yeah,
Um, but for people that might not know us, let's just make it clear that I love terrible movies as much as I love good movies. So Howling 2 is the cream of the crop of what the fuckery.
absolutely. What the fuckery is right. Yeah, and I mean, for you know, as for me, I also love horrible movies. Like you know, if it's got horror somewhere in the genre, I will put up with almost any amount of garbage. But I would rate this above garbage. I thought it was a delight.
It's yes, it's delight. It's I was about to say competently made, but actually that's not 100% true, and we'll
It
actually get
is
into that
barely competently
here.
made.
It yeah, but it's there is no way on God's green earth that this script, and I'm using that term very fucking loosely when I say script.
Right.
There is no way that this was originally written as a sequel to Howling One. And now this has never
Right.
been confirmed. Nobody's ever said anything differently. But I feel that somebody said, "Hey, we've got the rights to the Howling franchise. We need to make a sequel. Who's got a script?" And somebody's like, "Hey, I've got this weird ass fucking horny Transylvania werewolf script." And they're like, "Cool." And they handed it off to some schmo to like shoehorn in little elements of the first one just enough to pass it off as a sequel,
Mhm.
and that's what they ran with. That's the only way I can figure that happened, because as a sequel, like the movie already doesn't make hardly any fucking sense, but
Right.
as a sequel, it makes absolutely zero sense
No,
because
it is strung together with floss. It just barely has to do with the first one.
it's strung together with used floss. Um,
Yes. But I
yeah,
actually it's funny you mentioned that. I actually do have a little bit of info. And again, maybe we'll get into it a little bit more in depth, but you may be surprised at the origin of this script and the intention
oh no,
behind it
so you have an
is all
origin.
that I will say.
Okay. Well, how about this? So let's talk about, I don't want to sit here and bash the movie, because that's not what I want our show to be about. I want us to actually to showcase movies that are usually not loved, but movies that
Right.
I fucking love, and movies that you will probably be seeing for the first time.
Yes.
um because I like shedding light on things that are usually deemed terrible. um I'm just going to use this as somewhat of a comparison, but movies like Plan 9 from Outer Space, that's always regarded as the worst movie ever made,
Mhm.
is beyond not the worst movie ever made. I have seen
Yeah.
movies that came way before Plan 9 that was terrible. Plan 9 is actually a good fucking movie, but it just gets that stigma of being bad just because it's popular.
Right.
And movies like Howling 2, because it is a sequel to one of the greatest werewolf movies ever made, it's also gets that stigma of hatred. But that's not to say that there's not so much fucking fun in this movie, and that's what I want to talk about first. I mean,
Okay.
you know, we're definitely going to poke fun at this motherfucker
Of
all over the
course.
place. Um, but let's start off by like the cool things. Like, what are the like things that stuck out to you that you absolutely fucking loved?
The music, the soundtrack to this movie slaps, as the kids say. It, is all done by this new wave band, Babel, and they wrote a song for the movie, and the song is so good that they decided to play it no less than 20 times throughout the movie, which I was not mad about. Some people might not like, but I thought that was great. I was like, yeah, this song again, sweet. So and then they keep, cutting to this like new wave like punk club where this band is actually singing the song, and I'm always like, where is this
Yeah.
club and what does it have to do with everything else? But it's great. I really love the music. I think it gives it such a fun 80s vibe. I think the costumes in this movie are amazing. They're so much fun, especially with Stirba and Mariana. They just looked great the whole
Hmm.
time. Um, I love that they managed to like fit in some like weird culty witchy shit into this. Like they're not just werewolves, but they're like a werewolf cult that's led by like a
Right.
werewolf witch lady who's like
Keep it.
several millennia years old. And so yeah, I think that was a big thing for me. there's there's I have some thoughts on overall about the special effects, but there were a couple of moments that were pretty cool. Like the guy getting his head exploded was awesome, and like the like bat creature flying down his throat was pretty gnarly. So it has some lovable moments. I'm also a big fan of Reb Brown's Canadian tuxedo, denim on denim, throughout the whole movie. So there's a lot of great
Absolutely.
wardrobe choices just all around, and I think having it set in Transylvania is so interesting, and it felt like almost like an adventure movie in some parts because they're like traveling to go hunt these evil werewolves. I don't know. So yeah, I definitely
Right.
think overall the vibe was just really fun to me.
Yeah, I mean, my list of cool things is basically just going to be piggybacking off of what you just listed out. I'm still gonna list them just because I don't think I could say little about Howling 2 because I love that movie so much. The opening narration by Christopher Lee with for our audiences who's not seen Howling 2, I just want to paint a picture for you real quick. Just picture the
Yes.
opening crawl of Star Wars, but instead of the scrolling text, you still get like the stars and stuff, but instead of the scrolling text, you get Christopher Lee floating in space, holding a book I guess it's a Bible, and he's reading a verse, and in his best Christopher Lee deep voice, and then after he's done reading, the fucking music just hits, and it cuts to a montage of clips that you see 50 million more times throughout the movie of Transylvania. I fucking love that opening so much,
It's so
and
good.
it's so good. But I, again, I love the movie, but for a lot of people, it's going to disappoint them because if you're a fan of the old Hammer horror movies, like the British horror with all the
Mhm.
Frankenstein's and Draculas that Christopher Lee was known for, because I mean, goddamn, he's Dracula.
Right.
Um, the opening to this movie literally feels like, oh shit, this is an '80s Hammer movie. all the way
Yeah.
from the narration to the opening credits. But as soon as those credits are over with, it's like, oh, this is nothing like a Hammer movie.
Yeah, it definitely
But
shifts gears
anyway,
really quickly, but I'm okay with that because just having Christopher Lee reading from the Book of Revelation is so goth and fun, and it's very cool. Like if I was in a band, I would sample that in a song.
so yeah, that's another thing. Steve Parsons' band Babel. The song I think is actually just is titled "Howling." Um, that fucking
Mhm.
song rocks so hard. I'm a new wave junkie as it is anyway, and that's all this movie
Yeah.
is a new wave punk rock goth movie. And I found myself because I watched it again last night for like the 500th time, sitting in my man cave with a beer in my hand, and like the ending credits, the music plays, and I found myself like bobbing my head to the song, even though I've already listened to it like a million times throughout the film. Because, like you said, they plug it in every 10 seconds it plays. But you're right, as the kids say, the song slaps. I sound terrible saying that. Anyway,
So
I'm
did
gonna
I, but I took the risk.
I'm going to just like bullet point because I like I said, I'm almost like an old man with bullet point notes here. These are all things that I wrote down while I watched the film. I didn't want to do like going on internet and looking up facts. I thought it'd be more fun for me who has seen the movie a million times to sit there and just jot down my thoughts and what I knew about the movie on my own, and let you as
Mhm.
the first time viewer do the research. So these are my thoughts and list of what I fucking love about the movie. And again, some of these are similar to what you just said, but I'm gonna list them anyway. I wrote down knights with machine guns, and what I mean by that is at Sturba's Werewolf Castle, there's these guards that have like these medieval knight helmets, and they're like mostly shirtless with like bondage gear, and they're holding machine guns guarding the castle. I'm like, that is fucking cool,
It's
and
awesome.
that is something that I would 100% put in one of my movies. Um, Next thing I wrote down is Sturba ceremony slash bondage awesomeness.
Yeah.
So you were talking about like the cult witchy aspect of the movie. I I revel in like the weirdo bondage S&M shit that happens in the castle. There is just like random ass women with random ass titties just hanging out,
There's
tied
titties
up for
everywhere
no
in this
good reason
movie.
whatsoever. Leather bondage, and then to me, one of the coolest things is that when we're first introduced to Stirba, she's like this old, wrinkled up woman, like this hag of a woman, and they bring out this hot young chick, and they put her on an altar, and they're all chanting Stirba, and this cool ass ceremony, and Stirba actually sucks the life out of this chick and turns the chick into like a mummified corpse, while Sturba transforms into the rock hard bodied, Sybil Danning. And I thought that was
Yeah.
one of my favorite fucking parts. Um, I wrote down the Sturba's demon bat staff. So her staff that has like this mummified demon devil bat that sits atop of it that comes to life later on, and like you said, attacks the
Mhm.
guy and sticks his devil tail down the guy's throat and then crawls through his head. It's fucking awesome. Um, Creepy dwarf with the mask that talks in a child's voice.
Yeah, that guy's scary.
That yeah. So I watched Howling 2 for the first time when I was probably like, I don't know, maybe 10, 10 or 11, somewhere around there. I rented it from our local video store, took it home, and like most movies that I had seen at that age, I was too young to watch shit like this. Because there's like I said, there's so many titties and stuff everywhere. But I all I remember, like, it's funny because I watched it when I was 10 or 11, but I probably didn't see it again until like 4 years later or something like that. But the only thing that I could vividly remember, the two things I could vividly remember, was Sybil Danning in her leather outfit and this fucking dwarf. And the reason I remember those two is because one, I was 10 years old and Sybil Danning, oh my god, looks incredible in that leather outfit. So of
Of
course a 10-year
course.
old will remember that. But the other reason I remember the dwarf is that scared the shit out of me. Like out of the entire movie, that is the scariest part. Is this dwarf with this weird paper mache mask that's talking in this child voice. Um, so yeah, that's definitely one of the things that I love about it.
Yeah, the
I'm gonna
paper
like I'm
mache
gonna be
mask
long.
is especially creepy.
Yeah. Um, so this will probably bleed into like our one of our next conversations, but I do want to throw out something else I love is the weapons that they decide to use. So most werewolf movies, it's your typical silver bullets. Excuse me, uh, silver bullets or silver canes or whatever. And this movie like was like, no, fuck that. We're going crazy with some wild shit. So I wrote down a list of weapons that Christopher Lee, whose character's name is Stefan, that him and his people use. So I have got the following: consecrated oil. I don't know what the fuck consecrated oil is,
I
but
don't know what
fuck
that
it,
is
why
at all.
not?
Sounds rad though.
Um, Yeah, wax from sacred candles that they use as earplugs so
Mhm.
they don't succumb to evil chants, which I think is actually a really cool idea. Uh,
Yeah.
daggers, axes, etc., forged from titanium. So these werewolves are so fucking badass that no mere silver is going to kill them. They need shit forged by titanium. Um, and then we've got the chalice that held the blood of Christ and holy water. Now, it sounds like to me the people who wrote this movie literally didn't know their ass from a hole in the ground when it came to like werewolf lore. So they just threw like they threw like vampire lore into the mix and just hit the blender. Um, but it's still cool because again, not all werewolf movies have random weapons. It's always silver, and I thought this was actually a cool change, especially when
Yeah.
Stefan takes the consecrated bottle of oil, shouts some like crazy ass Latin shit, throws it at a werewolf, and literally explodes that motherfucker into a ball of flames.
I wrote down at
Uh,
that point, I wrote down Christopher Lee has the holy hand grenade.
yes. I mean, again, we can talk about how terrible this movie is, but this is a movie we're talking
It's
about where
awesome.
Christopher Lee takes consecrated oil and explodes a fucking werewolf during a battle in the Transylvania woods.
And he's got
So
like the
yeah,
Christian Avengers with him. He's got this like squad of like other like werewolf hunters with him. I would have loved to seen more of them actually, but it's so cool. Like I was so delighted to see Christopher Lee not get killed off in the first 5 minutes of this movie because that's kind of what I was expecting. I was like, there's no way that Christopher Lee is going to actually be like a main character in this movie. They're just using him to get people to watch it. And then he was in it like the whole time and it was great. So yeah, I'm all for watching Christopher Lee explode some werewolves with whatever the hell consecrated oil is.
absolutely. Um, so this is the last thing I'll throw out on my list of things I loved. I mean, the list is actually longer, but I will be here all night listing off everything that I love about it. So I'm just gonna say my favorite line from this fucking movie
Okay.
is is when is when the main well I don't know if you call them the main characters or what but the character of Stefan, which is played by Christopher Lee, is talking to our other character Jenny,
Mhm.
and Christopher Lee walks off, and then Reb Brown's character walks up to Jenny and says, "What did he say to you?" And this is my favorite part. She says to him, "He says your sister is a werewolf," and then Reb Brown looks at her and just goes, "Bullshit," and I laugh so fucking hard because I'm just like, that's your response. So if somebody looked at me, I don't have a sister, but if I did and somebody claimed that she was a werewolf, my reaction would not be bullshit. I would be like,
Bullshit.
what the fuck are you talking? But he just so nonchalantly just says bullshit and like walks off like nothing just happened. So
Yeah, Reb Brown has some incredible line readings in this movie because I also wrote down one of my favorite parts. I don't remember exactly where it happens in the movie now, but there's a part where he comes around the corner and is kind of like jokingly gonna sneak up on Jenny and he goes, "Boo." And then there's kind of this long he goes, "Boo. Hi, honey."
All right, you know what? I'm glad you brought. I was going to bring it up later, but since you brought it up now, that fucking scene kills me for two reasons. One is because the character he's sneaking up on it, Jenny, who is like the, I guess you would call her the love interest. Um, it's actually a really well shot scene where she's sitting in the bathtub and the camera is slowly dollying in on her, and
That's
it's actually
right. Yeah.
yeah, it's like a creepy build up. It's almost like, oh shit, is this like a werewolf POV? Is she about to get attacked? And as the camera sneaks up on her, it just fucking snap cuts to Reb Brown standing in the doorway going, boo!
Hi,
And I'm just like,
honey.
they, what was that even about? It served no
Also,
purpose
I'm sorry,
whatsoever. Other
but they
than,
just banged for the first time like 20 minutes before this happened, and he's already
yeah,
calling her honey. I'm like, are you guys been married for
yeah,
30 years?
yeah. There was like little to no chemistry between these two before
No.
this point. They get to Transylvania. They check into their room. He fucks her against the wall, no nudity, and which is funny. The the one like normal sex scene in this entire movie, and there's no nudity,
It's so
but we
chaste
get
in
lots.
comparison.
We, yes, we get lots of hairy sex with nudity later on, but yeah, you're right. Like they have sex, and then like 10 minutes later, he's calling her honey, like they've been together the entire time. It's very weird.
Another line reading. I screamed at my boyfriend who was not watching. He was playing video games in the same room, but on a different TV. And I screamed and paused the movie and rewound it because I think it's great in a movie when they say the title. And when Christopher Lee actually said, "Your sister is a werewolf," I was like, he said it. He said the title.
Oh, girl. um. So look, we keep talking about how there's so many weird choices and weird cuts and things like that. Uh, the editing in this movie is so disjointed that there's just things that there was choices made that makes no sense whatsoever. And I wrote this down last night while watching it. One, this is either one of the most poorly written, directed, and edited movies of all time, or two, this movie was 3 hours long, and they had to cut it down to its 1.5 hour runtime.
Yeah,
It's either one or the other because the cuts do just make no sense. And like there will
right.
be a scene that's literally happening at night, and then the very next scene it's daylight, but it's only supposed to be like 5 minutes have passed. It's so weird. And then
Yeah,
like there's just like random close up shots of shit that doesn't make sense. There's reaction like there's characters giving reaction shots. It's not even in the same fucking scene, and it'll just
okay, I didn't even
like
notice
somebody
that.
will
That's
do something.
fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, it's weird. It's weird. The movie, like you said, is a complete fucking mess. Um,
But I think it belongs in the
I know.
Library of Congress.
Maybe it does for a lot of different reasons. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like again, I love the movie. I have so much fun with it. Um, I think the people that hate the movie are just people who just don't like to have fun. When watching movies, people that are the I hate the quote unquote cinema snobs. But it is. It's
Yeah,
a fun popcorn movie. It's a movie that you're not supposed to take seriously. So I hope they weren't
of course.
shooting
Yeah.
for
I
serious.
was reading some of the
Uh,
reviews when I was looking up about it. I was like reading what like I was like, why is Roger Ebert reviewing The Howling 2 at all? Like why is he anywhere near this movie? But yeah, the critics of course panned it, but as with a lot of movies like this, horror fans, it always finds its home somewhere. And the horror community is a very large, diverse group of people, and no matter how quote unquote bad the movie is, the beautiful thing about this genre is that somebody will love it. It's somebody's favorite movie. And I
right.
mean, you're the prime example of this. Like you love this movie. It's one of your all-time favorites. And I loved watching this. I'll definitely watch this movie again in the future. Like I thought it was so fun. I look forward to a post-COVID world where I can watch this in a room full of like 10, 15 other people, and we all just drink and eat popcorn and yell at the TV. Like it's so much fun.
I like that you bring that up because everybody's go-to favorite worst movie is Troll 2, and of course
Right.
there's always, big gatherings for Troll 2 viewings, and there's midnight screenings and people go to this shit. They almost treat it like Rocky Horror Picture Show. Um and
Mhm.
I firmly like, I love Troll 2. I really do. That movie I know is terrible,
Yeah.
and I love it for all those reasons. I feel that Howling 2 is a much better movie than Troll 2. Um,
Yes.
However, I do feel that it's not a whole lot better. And I feel that, like you just brought up, it would be fun to hold Howling 2 screenings for the exact same reason that people do that the Troll 2 screenings. People, I think, would have fun getting together and shouting at the screen and just having a good time with this movie.
Right, like, it's so much fun, and it's so even though it's The Howling 2, there is no prerequisite required. You don't need to have seen The Howling 1
Not at
unless
all.
you just want a tiny bit of additional context, but honestly, it probably would be even more fun if you hadn't seen The Howling 1 because 'cause you're not subconsciously comparing it to its predecessor.
That's funny because I remember when I told you this was going to be the movie we were doing for this episode. You were like, "Shit, I haven't seen the first one," and I was like, "Oh, you don't have to."
You did say that. I just felt, I felt like I really wanted to have a fully rounded understanding of this movie and its place kind of in this franchise. Um and yeah, doing these as a double feature is very interesting.
Oh, you're in for a treat. So I'll just get this out of the way. Not only do I love Howling 2 so much, but I'm not ashamed. Like, I hate people. I hate the term um, a guilty pleasure. Like, I think that's a terrible term.
Yeah,
You shouldn't have to feel guilty about something you like. And I love
I agree.
some of the greatest horror movies ever made. I also love some of the worst movies ever made. And case in point, Howling 2.
Mhm.
With that said, I fucking love the entire Howling franchise. It's one it's you know,
Mhm.
it's to my knowledge, I think it's like the only fucking werewolf franchise. Um not counting, like, the Universal
Which is
Studios.
unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. Um
I
so the
don't know
funny thing
why,
is,
werewolves don't get the love that vampires do. But, anyway, yeah, I it's interesting that this is the only like one of the only major franchises of werewolves.
I think it all comes down to probably to budget reasons and effects, because I mean, nobody wants to intentionally make a shitty werewolf movie. And let's face it, if you make a werewolf movie,
Right.
you want a kick-ass werewolf, and a kick-ass werewolf is going to cost you some scratch. So, you know that's probably why
Yeah,
there's not
and
a
if you
lot.
just CG it all, it'll look like shit.
Right, case in point, American Wolf in Paris. um but, so let's not spend too much time on this, but I will ask it anyway. We're not reviewing the first one. We're technically not reviewing it, but we're not talking about the first one. But since you did bring it up and it was your first time viewing of it, uh, give me a quick, 15-second thought on what your feelings on the first one.
I really liked it. I Again, it has a completely different vibe from the second one. But it's one of the greats as far as werewolf movies go. It has some of the best practical effects I've ever seen. I would argue that the transformation scene in The Howling One beats American Werewolf in London in a lot of ways.
I agree with that.
I don't know if that's a hot take or not. I feel like I've heard somebody else say that before, but after seeing it with my own eyes, I was like, "Oh, that is just I could not figure out how they did it." Like I knew that it was practical effects, but I could not see the trickery. I couldn't see the fake part of it. And that was really amazing to me for a movie from 1981. So yeah,
You said you've heard somebody say that before. In all reality, it could have been me when we were on the set of one of my movies at some point. Um,
that's possible.
so yeah, I don't think it's a hot take. I mean, there's people that's going to 100% tear us down for saying that, but uh, no, I think the difference is, I think it all comes down to the design of the werewolf in a lot of ways. So
Yeah.
American Werewolf in London, um, hands down, Rick Baker, one of the greatest effects artists to ever live. I mean, he's probably the
Mhm.
greatest in all honesty. Um, and let's not take
Yeah.
anything away from him. That transformation in American Werewolf in London is bar none one of the greatest things ever put on film. I mean, he won a fucking Oscar for it. It's actually, excuse me,
Yeah.
his Oscar win for that was actually the first time that a special effects makeup was a category. Yeah, so not only did he win an Oscar for it, but he won the first
That's right.
Oscar. So to say that that the effects is not good is bullshit. No, that's some of the greatest shit ever. And I think what makes it stick out so much is because of not only the effects but how it was shot. It was shot in a completely bright
Yes.
lit room, and that's not something you usually see in movies. Usually, an effects heavy
Mhm.
scene that's a transformation or anything like that is in a dark room, dark lit room. Where the shadow, the contrast is hiding little imperfections, or whatever. But in American Wolf in London, it's brightly lit and it's in your face and it's crazy. So yes, it
Mhm.
is one of the best. But the reason I love, and I think it just comes down to preference of type of movies you like. The first Howling is my favorite werewolf movie. It's my number one favorite werewolf movie, and that is
Mhm.
because it's got like this grimy, like sleazy tone to it. And I've always called it the Texas Werewolf Massacre because it feels like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie with a werewolf. Um, which is funny
Oh, that's
because
a
the
really
set
good way
designer,
to describe it.
yeah, it's funny because the set designer from the original Chainsaw is the set designer on Howling. So I mean that's definitely lends a
Oh,
hand to it. And I shouldn't be sitting here spouting knowledge about Howling when
yeah.
we're talking about the second one, but still no. Joe Dante's first movie is fucking phenomenal, and the transformations are out of this world, man. And what's cool, this is where I'm going to get into the long-winded shit. You just need to stop me sometimes. I'm the Kevin Smith of horror when it comes to talking. Um, but no, that's one of the things I think is so cool is that Rick Baker was originally assigned to do the makeup effects for The Howling, but he had already told John Landis that he would do the American Wolf in London, but that kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. So when Howling came along, he signed on for that, but the two were getting ready to shoot simultaneously, so he had to respect, you know, who came first. So he went to John Landis for American Wolf in London, but his protege Rob Bottin was sent to do the Howling. So technically, Rick Baker still had his fingerprints on the Howling,
Oh.
and I think
That's
that's
so
amazing.
interesting, I didn't know that at all. That makes a lot of sense.
Um, but yeah, let's just go ahead. Like that'll be my final thoughts on the first Howling, since we're talking about the second one. But yes, I'm glad you saw it. Again, I think it's like I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but I think it's the greatest werewolf movie ever made. However, it is extremely dated with some of like. So let's get this out of the way. The practical effects and the Howling is amazing. The stop motion effects are dated as hell.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's my final thoughts
Right,
on the
yeah,
first.
I could see that.
Let's get back into Howling 2. Let's talk about the actors and the characters of the movie.
Yeah.
So
So,
Christopher Lee.
okay, well, I mean, obviously the yeah, Christopher Lee. We got Christopher Lee as Stefan, and Christopher Lee is just great in everything he's ever in, and it's really fun. I think a lot of people from my generation, I'm a millennial, in case it wasn't obvious, and I think a lot of people from my generation associate Christopher Lee as Saruman from Lord of the Rings,
Right.
and that is so just barely scratching the surface of this man's life and career. So I know I was very delighted to find out that he was this like huge classic horror icon, and that he's Dracula in all the Hammer movies.
This is just my opinion, but he not only has he played Dracula, but to me, he is the Dracula. Like I love
Yeah.
Bela Lugosi, but I love Bela Lugosi for different reasons. I think Christopher Lee is the pitch perfect Dracula. But go ahead,
Yeah. He brings like a distinguished presence to this
gentlemen. Yeah,
really Yeah, he to this like really raunchy kind of trashy movie, which it's a really interesting balance to me. And like I said before, I kind of thought at first that they only brought him on to just kind of have a cameo and they were going to use him to advertise the movie to get people to watch it. But I was really happy to see that he actually is a major player in this movie. And every scene, I mean, he just steals every scene that he's in. He's such a classic actor. Like he's just acting the pants off of this movie. Like he is just stealing every scene that he's in compared to everybody. So I think as a character also, he's very interesting, being the brother of Stirva, this ancient werewolf witch, which they don't go a lot into like the backstory of that, which I actually like. I don't need to have all that shoved down my throat.
Right.
I think as a character, he's a really good way to kind of get the action going and to keep that like spooky kind of creepy vibe through every scene that he's in.
Right. So he's he's definitely the best part of the movie, hands down. Um, he's he's so good. However, I want to throw out that you said how did they get him in this movie? Because he does stick out like a sore thumb. Like he acts out acts everybody in the entire movie. Um, I feel a part of it, and this is not a fact. This is just me spouting what my personal thoughts. I feel like he did this movie due to John Carpenter's Halloween. And what I mean by that
Oh.
is when Carpenter did Halloween, Carpenter approached Peter Cushing to play Dr. Loomis, and Peter Cushing turned it down. He then approached Christopher Lee to play Dr. Loomis. He turned it down. And then he went to Donald Pleasance. Pleasance said yes. And of course, all three of those guys are very famous British horror alumni.
Mm-hmm.
And years later, Christopher Lee would admit that like the worst mistake that he ever made in his acting career was turning that role down. So I feel like maybe when he was approached by whoever, like, hey, we're doing the Howling Part Two, we want you to be in this. And he was like, okay, a sequel to a successful horror movie. Maybe I should fucking do this. And I think maybe that's how they wrangled him in. However,
Mm-hmm.
let it be known that he had he thought the movie was shit just as much as anybody else did. So much so
Yeah.
that years later, Joe Dante, who of course directed the original Howling, who also directed Gremlins. When Joe Dante did Gremlins Part Two, of course Christopher Lee is in that. He's one of the head scientists that creates all the crazy formulas that makes the crazy Gremlins. When Christopher Lee was on set, he personally apologized to Joe Dante for being in Howling 2. If that just
I
goes to
saw
show
I read that.
it just goes to show what he
I
thought
just
of the
love
movie.
that. Yeah, I
But
also read something that the director said, that Philippe Moreau said that anytime that he wasn't on camera acting, he would behave as if he was basically just hoping that he would just disappear and just get away from this set. Like I think he hated every moment of filming this movie, which to me just makes it even better. Honestly, I love the fact. Like I'm just thinking about the scene where Christopher Lee goes to that new wave club and they put those fucking sunglasses on him, and which is
oh yeah.
one of my favorite shots in a movie I've ever seen. And I'm just imagining Christopher Lee and his turtleneck and his distinguished him just hating every moment of having to wear those new wave sunglasses.
But you know what? Like, I remember you sent me the picture last night, and it's one of my favorite fucking moments of the movie, just because, like you said, Christopher Lee in some 1980s new wave sunglasses. It quickly became the wallpaper to my cell phone.
Yes.
um, but yeah, you know what? Like, good on Christopher Lee though, because obviously he thought the movie was shit while he was making it, but like you said, the performance is still there, and it's still a fucking badass performance. So like he might have thought it was shit, but he was still distinguished enough to be like, you know what, I'm still gonna give it my all. And he's again the best part of the entire movie.
Yeah. There's some other characters too, some other actors. I'm gonna put air quotes actors.
Yeah, well, let's move on to the next actor. Let's go with I guess the second leading man. I mean, it depends on what you think. I mean, I consider Christopher Lee's character Stefan as the main character, but in all actuality, I guess it would be Reb Brown. His character would be technically the leading man. Um, so Reb Brown, phew, he's never been a good actor. However, he had that look. He,
Yeah,
physically fit, physically fit, muscular guy, good looking guy. Um, he he's what in the wrestling world they say the look that you think
right.
of when you think of an action hero or something. Reb Brown, had that. I mean, so much so that he is one of the first on-screen Captain Americas. He played Captain America in two made-for-TV 1979 movies. One of the second, which have, had Christopher Lee in it as the villain. Um,
Oh, look at
but
that.
yeah, so I've always liked Reb Brown. I've never thought he was a great actor, but again, like he's always had a cool presence, and he's always fun to watch. And of
Mhm.
course, he's best known for "You're the Hunter from the Future," which is a terrible, uh, terrible movie. But
I've never
it's
heard of that.
uh,
You're the hunter from the future.
You're the yeah YOR You're the Hunter from the Future. It's like a sword and sandal movie meets like cheesy sci-fi. It's pretty
Oh,
terrible.
that's right. That's right up my alley. Yeah, we kind of touched on it a bit before, but he's got some great line readings in this movie. He just doesn't, I guess to me, he doesn't come off as particularly like heroic or that he even like knows what's really going on. Like to me, I feel like he's just kind of following around the other actor, Jenny. He's just following
Yeah.
her around and because he it takes so long for him to even get on board with the idea that his sister is a werewolf until he actually sees her like burst out of the coffin. And
Even
so
then,
to me, yeah, even then he seems really like just skeptical, and I feel like throughout the whole movie he is just so um out like relaxed to the point that it's out of place. Like I feel he's just like on a vacation to Transylvania. And he like happens to be
well,
fighting werewolves on occasion.
it's funny that you say line readings because it literally feels like that's what his dialogue is. It looks as if he looked down at his script and then looked back up when they said action and said that line. It's
It's
really no
fantastic.
emotion behind the lines whatsoever. And like it's funny to me because this guy is supposed to be our hero, our leading man. This guy is supposed to be the brother to Dee Wallace's character from the first one.
Mhm.
And none of that pays off in any way, shape, or form. And like I said, I love Rep Brown. Like if I could, I'd put him in my fucking movies. Um, but he is literally, I think he's the weakest link of the entire movie.
Yeah, like I feel like you keep mentioning that he's supposed to be like our hero, but I don't even know if that's clear. Like for me watching it, he seems just like a plucky, fun side character, even though you're right. Like, I feel like just based on the script and the story and the fact that he's got this connection to Dee Wallace from the first Howling, he should be our protagonist. But
Right.
I think maybe that's one of the kind of clunkier things about this script is that it's not entirely clear who we're following. Like to me, starting out, I'm like, oh, okay, so we're gonna follow this reporter, Jenny, who used to work with Dee Wallace's character, and she's gonna take along her brother, like this guy's brother, and figure it out. But then she kind of like fades into the background very quickly, and then it's like, oh, okay, no, well, Reb Brown's our hero, and he's gonna fight all these werewolves. But then he kind of fades into the background. Really, to me, the main characters are Christopher Lee and Sybil. What's her last?
Civil
Sybil
Danning. Yeah.
Danning. Those
Yeah.
are the main characters. Those are the strongest characters to me, and and also the character of Mariana. Like those have the most commanding screen presence out of anybody in that movie. So I think those are the
Absolutely.
people that you're gonna remember.
Um, I just had this thought that if anybody listening wants to throw a bunch of money my way, I want to make a movie that's literally just called Reb Brown versus Werewolves, and we bring
Oh my
back Reb
god.
Brown where it's just him for an hour and a half just fighting werewolves,
He has to be
and
wearing
that
the
way,
denim on denim outfit, though.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, you know, like we keep talking about, his presence though. Like again, like he doesn't have like, even though he's supposed to be the hero, he doesn't have that presence. Even though again he's got that stature about him. I mean, this is the guy who played
Right.
football at the University of Southern California, and he lost the starting running back position to O.J. Simpson, and like so
What?
this guy, yeah,
The 6 degrees of OJ Simpson.
the 6 degrees of O.J. Simpson. Yeah, Reb Brown lost the starting running back position to fucking O.J. Simpson. How's that for some knowledge? But
Can you
yeah, so
imagine
like
how different the world
the
would
world would have been.
be had that
Yeah,
had
think
that been
about that
different?
because,
Wow.
it's one of those this is like a Thanos Endgame moment. Like, if we went back in time and made Reb Brown the starting running back of the University of Southern California, um, would O.J. Simpson go on to become as famous as he did, and would he have been caught up in a "if the glove doesn't fit, you must have quit" scenario?
Yeah, would he have even gotten in the
The world
white
may never know.
Bronco? We don't know.
Would he be the star? Would he be the star of Howling 2?
Oh,
Now
wow.
that would
Now
be
that would have
I
been fantastic.
awesome. Yeah, because you know what? All deaths or, murder or no murder, whatever side you choose, I'm biased. I'm not voicing my opinion. But before all that shit, O.J. Simpson was awesome in movies. I loved him in the Naked Gun movies. Motherfucker
Yeah,
had
yeah,
great
he was
comedic timing.
yeah, I mean, it makes me wonder, maybe he wouldn't have become a would-be, abuser and murderer had he had he just stuck to acting and Reb Brown had gotten that spot on the team. We'll never know, but, it's fun to think about. There's
Anyway,
probably some weird alternate reality, but yeah, I could go off on
reality.
that.
Um,
But
is
yeah,
is
no, Reb
is
Brown is
O.J.
so fun to watch. Wait, sorry, is OJ what?
Is OJ, he's locked up now for some other crime, right?
I don't know. I think he's out and he's like got like a prank show or some shit. I don't really know. I don't know what OJ's up to, but
Although
it's,
the
you
real
know.
reason I asked is like I kind of want Reb Brown and OJ together in a werewolf movie. But anyway,
I was going to say whatever OJ's up to, it's no Howling 2, that's for sure.
that's for damn sure. Let's move on to the next character of Jenny, played by Annie McEnroe.
Yeah, so she this is like one of the most milk toast characters. I she is either I don't she's just very underutilized. Like I feel like she's kind of used at the beginning to kind of kick things off and to have she's kind of there to add another connection to the first movie because she's supposed to be like another person that worked at this news station where Dee Wallace worked.
That we never
Um,
saw.
that we never saw. We've never seen her before, but she knew her well, I guess. And for the first part of the movie, it seems like she's kind of helping to lead the charge. But really quickly, she just kind of takes a back seat and fades into obscurity, and she spends the last quarter of the movie just like tied up in a dungeon. So, to me, and this isn't really a complaint; it's more just a fact. She's kind of not really a developed character, in my opinion. But that's
No, not
okay
at all.
because I think that's fine.
No, her character. First of all, that character has nothing to do. She is nothing but a plot device and a exposition starter. Is all that her character boils down
Yeah.
to. Um,
They
and
didn't give her any
I hate.
business. I was hoping oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I was hoping that I was hoping that she'd have more to do. I was hoping that she'd be a little bit more instrumental in like the downfall of these werewolves. But yeah, she's just
I'm
kind of
I'm
thrown
a
in
little
there.
bit I'm a little bit on the other side of the fence in a way because while I do agree that she should have had more, I'm also in some ways glad that she didn't have a lot of meat to the bones of the story, just because she's also not a good actress.
Yeah, that's true. She wasn't great. So
Uh,
it's fine that she said less things. And
yeah.
honestly, this there's just so much going on already in this plot that I don't think her having a more influential role would have saved it or would have changed the outcome. I feel like it would have just added to the noise and made it even more messy in a way.
Right.
So with that, I'm kind of happy that she kind of faded into the background about halfway through the movie. Big fan of the
Hmm.
sweater vests that she rocks throughout.
Oh, absolutely.
She's got a really great sweater vest situation going on at the beginning of the movie. Um, but yeah, she's just kind of meh.
Yeah, definitely, man. Like I said, she's the character is bland as hell. And she's not a great actor. Matter of fact, like I keep saying she's not a great actor, and it's funny. I cannot recall another movie that I have seen her in except for Beetlejuice. Is the only other movie that I know her from. Um,
Wait, who is she in Beetlejuice?
she is the shitty pesky realtor.
Oh my gosh, you're blowing my mind. I did not know that.
Yeah, she's the little the snooty pesky realtor that talks to the Maitlands before they drive to the hardware store, and then we see her again when she pulls up to the house. She's the one that basically sold the house against the Maitlands' wishes. Like she's kind of the reason for the movie in a way, if you think about it. But no,
Right.
that's her. I mean, I'm sure she was in other things,
Well,
but uh, yeah, the Howling 2 and Beetlejuice is the only things I know her from.
I'm glad that she continued to work, I guess.
Work, I guess. You know,
Yeah, air quotes work.
let's yeah, work. Let's do a really quick transition from the underutilized to the most utilized. Though let's talk
Yes.
about Sturba, the werewolf bitch herself. Let's talk about the rock hard bodied goddess of Battle Beyond the Stars, Chained Heat, Hercules with Lou Ferrigno and Malibu Express. Let's talk about Sybil Danning.
I loved her in this. I didn't know who she was, admittedly, before this, so this was my introduction to her. She she just like walked out of like a glam rock music video and into this movie, and it's fantastic. Like, I mean, she's smoking hot, so that's just great on right out the bat. I think she does a really good job as this like evil werewolf queen, and she's got this great outfit throughout. She literally, like I said, the glam rock, she looks like she's like an alien from space. It almost doesn't make sense, but I'm not complaining. That outfit that they put her in, but it's awesome. It's so great.
Absolutely. Yeah,
It's incredible.
the scene that sticks out to me, it's actually what like visually one of my favorite parts. Again, like there's so many things in this movie that I would do, which is why I can't rip apart everything. Um, but one of my favorite visual moments is it's closer towards the end of the movie where she's sitting on like a throne, and like the throne's kind of got like bones and shit on it,
Yes.
but the entire room is so fucking bitchin', like just gothic as hell. She's sitting on a throne, like all kind of like cocked to the side in this badass outfit. She's got on some 80s sunglasses, and she's petting like a stuffed taxidermy wolf, and then she's got like the staff in the other hand. It's like it
Yes.
looks like fucking Skeletor sitting atop his throne on Snake Mountain, but it's actually Sybil Danning with giant boobs
Yes.
and badass 80s uh hair and outfit. It cuts a fucking hell of a scene, man.
It's so good. Yeah, definitely the set design was great for this one. Yeah, she definitely also is a scene stealer.
How could you not be?
She's definitely one of the better parts of this movie to me. Yeah, I mean, look at her. Yeah. So yeah, I think casting her was a great decision. She's a really fun villain. And yeah, she just was fun to watch. Like in every scene, I didn't really even care what
Right.
was happening.
I'll throw out like a little nerd moments for myself, for from myself. So I just listed off some of her other like notable works. Like Battle Beyond the Stars, which is like one of the most famous Star Wars ripoffs. Chained Heat, the Hercules movie with Lou Ferrigno, Malibu Express, which is one of the most riffed shitty '80s movies ever. Um, but I've always been a fan of Sybil Dane. Like I said, I saw this movie when I was like 10 or 11, and I kind of had to see everything that she was in because 10-year-old looks at somebody with that looks like her, it's like, oh shit. Um, but total nerd moment.
Yeah, I was thinking about all of the weird, the weird sexual awakenings that a whole generation had watching
Yeah,
this
yeah.
movie.
Me was I was one of them. But I had a total geek out moment around about 13 years ago. So one of the best cinematic experiences I've ever had in my life was I got to watch Grindhouse in theaters in its entirety, which was Planet Terror and Death Proof as a double bill. A lot of
Right.
people didn't get the actual experience of watching the full double feature. They had the fake trailers that showed between, and
Yeah.
I remember going to a midnight screening when the movie came out. And it was like 4 hours of fucking badass. But the fake trailers that played in between them, one of them was that Rob Zombie did was Werewolf Women of the SS, and I
Yes.
was geeking through the entire movie, but when that fake trailer played, I immediately recognized Sybil Danning. And like the audience is fucking quiet. And meanwhile, me, I'm like, yes. And there people like turned around, looked at me like, what the fuck is this guy's problem? Just because I recognized not only was Rob Zombie doing a fucking kick-ass fake trailer, not only was it Sybil Danning back that I hadn't seen in years, but the trailer was a werewolf thing. So I was like, this is so fucking badass.
Yeah.
So yeah, I geeked out hard, and a lot of people. I'm probably the only person in that entire auditorium that was fucking geeking out over Sybil Danning being in, a trailer for all of like 2 minutes.
I love that though. I love that you can tell that Rob Zombie was probably a fan of this movie because I think I read isn't she also in his
Yeah,
Halloween
she plays
remake?
Nurse Wynn in Rob Zombie's first Halloween. She's depending on which cut of the movie you watch, whether it be the theatrical or the unrated, will definitely cut a different view of the character because in the theatrical cut, like she's just like just random nurse that just kind of sits down and you know the young Michael Myers stabs her in the throat with a fucking fork. But in the unrated version, she's just like a terrible
Yeah.
bitch that kind of gets what she deserved. Um, but yeah, no, like it was
That's
great seeing her
awesome.
in that as well. That was another geek out moment. And it's funny about Sybil Danning. I was like, she was very popular back in the day. I mean, yeah, she mostly did B movies, and of course she was in Playboy and stuff like that. And of course she was right. But I think one thing to note,
Yeah, I was gonna say you
yeah,
don't say.
but I think it's worthy to note that she was announced as Octopussy in the James Bond flick, but was never officially cast for.
Oh.
Yes, it was weird. So I don't recall what magazine it was. I don't want to say, so don't hold me to this. It could have been Variety or some magazine like that. But she was announced to not only be an Octopussy, but to be Octopussy. And I just like saying that word, Octopussy. But
Oh, wow.
yeah, she was announced, but she was never officially cast, and I don't know the exact reason of why that happened. But yeah, that's just some weird ass knowledge that Sybil
Hmm.
Danning could have had a moment of being a Bond girl, but it just didn't come to fruition.
Could have been a
Yeah,
Bond girl. But instead she's a wolf girl, and we're all
I think
thankful
we're
for
all the
that,
better
aren't
for
we?
that.
I agree. I feel like we should talk about her two cohorts, her werewolf gang,
Well, let me ask you this.
with Marsha Hunt as
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to
oh, yeah,
before
what's
we
up?
get to that, I want to throw out something because you had brought it up earlier, and I made note of to talk about it a little bit more. Um, so you had brought up how Stefan, Christopher Lee's character, is the brother to Sturba, Sybil Danning's character, and she's like this. ancient werewolf queen, right?
Mhm.
So one thing that I had noticed for the first time, like again, I've seen this movie lots of times, but I just noticed it for the first time last night was I never put these two things together, but they say that um, this is the 10th millennium birthday of Sterba. So this bitch is 10 millennium years old, right? So how fucking old is Stefan?
Mhm. I thought about that too. I was like, they don't say. They don't there's no so is Stefan just this immortal being also? Like I thought that too, and I think it's really
Well, it's
cool.
also very weird because it's like, are they like locked in some kind of like Mortal Kombat? Like they were cursed like to fight each other to the end of time or some shit. But then I got thinking about they're supposed to be brother and sister, and spoiler warning. I don't want to give away too much about the end. But the ending becomes very sensual and incesty. Like it
Yeah.
seems.
I wrote in my notes dot dot dot
Oh my
incest question
fucking god!
mark.
Look, I wrote down incest question mark dot dot dot. Yeah, I because like
Yeah,
the
I was like, it kind of just comes out of left field, and they don't spend a lot of time on it, like you're saying. They really just pepper it into like a line or two, and you're like, hold up,
right, yeah,
are they? You know?
yeah. I wondered the exact same thing. Who knows? But yeah. So let's go ahead. Let's move on to
Who knows?
like you said, to the cohorts.
Yeah, Mariana and Vlad. So we got Marsha Hunt as Mariana and Judd Omen as Vlad. And I looked up. Marsha Hunt looked familiar, but I looked her up and I didn't recognize anything else she'd been in. And I felt the same thing about Judd.
Why don't we do this? Because again, like I didn't look up any like anything about the movie. I just thought I just wrote down notes of shit that I had already known previously, and I thought it'd be fun for you to look up. So let's split
Yeah.
these two. Let's put these guys down the middle. Um, I know little to nothing about the character of Vlad. I don't know anything about him other than he's in the fucking movie. I, however, know a little bit about Marsha Hunt's character, Mariana. So why don't you go first
Yeah.
on him, and then I'll talk a little bit about the Mariana character.
Okay. Yeah. I okay, I'm just basing this off of his IMDb, and a lot of these movies, if I have seen them, it's been a really long time since I've seen them, so I can't say for sure exactly what character he's in, but like Judd Omen as Vlad, I knew he looked familiar, and he's in Pee-wee's Big
Oh
Adventure.
shit!
He's in Dune. That's what I remember him from, because he's in David Lynch's Dune, which is insane. And yeah, so yeah, he's kind of worked a little bit more than than most of the actors in this movie, other than like Christopher Lee and probably like Sybil. um but yeah, he's kind of a placeholder character. There's not much to him. He's just kind of hot and horny, and he's a werewolf, and he's obsessed with Sybil, and he's like her right hand man in many ways.
Yeah, that dude is really fucking horny. Like, I feel like 95% of his screen time is him arching his back and like making stupid werewolf faces while being horny. Like that's all he pretty much does.
Yeah, like they even make a point that like when when Jenny and Ben are having sex for the first time in their hotel, like there's like this like festival going on outside in the street that Vlad is at, and it's like Vlad can
Yeah,
sense that there's sex happening
you noticed
nearby.
that
Like he like
too.
sniffs the air, and I was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
an interesting touch that
Oh my
they've
god.
given.
So I noticed that last night as well, and I literally like thought to myself, is that what that means? Because I never really picked up on it before. But I was like, this motherfucker is smelling sex in the air.
I think that's what it means, and he gets so excited. He's so happy. He's just like, "Yes, somebody's having sex nearby. That's good. Very good." Um yeah, he as a character, he doesn't do much, but he was very fun to watch. Like he has a very good screen presence, and he's just got one of those faces. And he was very fun as a vampire. So I
Werewolf.
think it was good casting to have him as like a were. Oh, did I say vampire?
You did.
Okay, well then look,
It's hard to tell. I know.
these are the most vampire these are the most vampiric werewolves I've ever seen.
You're 100% right. Yeah, the movie takes place in Transylvania. Um, Stefan's trying to stab werewolves through the heart with a titanium stake. Um, there's
Yes.
bats. So yeah, yeah, it's completely like I said earlier. It's almost as if the people who made this movie didn't know shit about werewolves, so they injected vampire lore into the movie. But yeah, you're 100% right. It's very vampire
Yeah.
like.
But what about Mariana? Because I think you know a bit about Marsha Hunt as Mariana.
So I know a little bit about her, and this is just from learning things throughout the years. Um, I know I say a lot, but Jesus Christ. So Marsha Hunt played Mariana. She previously was with Christopher Lee in another horror movie, which was Hammer's Dracula 80 1972. She got to play
Mhm.
a little sultry vampire in that as well. However, what you probably do not know is the song Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones was written about her.
No way. That's awesome.
She was married
I
to
had
Mick
no
Jagger.
idea what she
She was married
what?
to Mick Jagger and they had a daughter together, Carrie Jagger.
How did I not I even looked her up and there was nothing about that's incredible. That blew my mind cuz so okay, just for context if you're listening, before we started recording, Matt was like dropping like hints to fun facts he knew about the movie to see if I had already found it in my research and he was like, "All right, Rolling Stones." And I was like, "What what? I'm sorry, what?" So I had no idea how you were going to tie Rolling Stones to this movie, but
Yep.
wow, okay. That is very interesting.
So it's kind of fun. This is what I like about us doing this is that we're not going to sit here and just review a movie. We're going to talk about random weird shit that kind of makes the movie more fun. And
Right.
so think about this: the things we've already talked about, the weird shit, the links between O.J. Simpson. Now we got links to fucking Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. Like this isn't shit that you would normally probably bring up and talk about when you review a movie. Fuck Beetlejuice. I mean, it's fun to
This is such a movie that I feel like you would not many people know of this movie unless they're super into the shit that we're into.
right.
And the fact that it has all these connections to such mainstream well-known things like Beetlejuice, like OJ, weirdly, like the Rolling Stones, like that is that just I don't know, that's just really cool to me. I like seeing all of the connections and I think it definitely adds more fun and more value to this movie that could have just, fallen into obscurity, but people like you are keeping it alive and get breathing new life into it.
For better or for worse. Um, no,
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun for anybody listening that has not seen Howling 2 to now go and watch this movie with that knowledge. Like you can now watch this movie and be like, man, this sexy chocolate werewolf bitch is the reason why we got the song Brown Sugar. Like that's a whole different way of watching this movie now, you know?
Yeah, that's
So
incredible.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun.
And just as a
But aside from
character,
that,
I love her.
yeah,
She's such a scene stealer and she looks just so badass the whole movie. Just from like the first time you see her at this like new wave club. And she kills those guys like under the overpass. Like it's great. She's vicious, she's brutal, she's ruthless, but she's also like sexy and sultry and
yeah.
mysterious.
No, I love every minute that she's on screen. She does have a great presence, and again, like she looked, she was in Dracula AD 1972, which you know to me is the worst Hammer Dracula movie, but it still had badass female vampires in it, and she of course kicked ass in that as well.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I love Mariana. I love the character. She does like excuse me, she doesn't to me have a whole lot to do. I wish out of anybody that I wish they had a little bit more, it would be her. Even though she is basically in the entire movie, there's not a lot of depth. Like she doesn't really even have many lines. Like
Yeah.
she just gets to stand there, look cool, be sexy, and have a hairy werewolf threesome with Sturba and Vlad.
Twice.
Twice, which I think is actually the same thing but looped. Just it's just like the music; it's looped over and over again.
Right. Yeah, that comes back to the whole editing thing. It's like I couldn't tell at that point if this was, round 2 or if this was just the same threesome
Right.
just continued.
Well, since
But
we're on
yeah,
the
she's
subject,
great.
let's talk about the hairy werewolf threesome.
Yeah, so pretty much right, kind of all of a sudden it turns into like a softcore porn, which was hilarious. I was like, "What am I watching?" Yeah, they bring Mariana in as like a, you know, Stirba wants to have a threesome with her and her hot Vlad werewolf boyfriend, and everything's pretty normal at first until they start changing a little bit, and then the next cut everyone's covered in hair all over, and it's one of those, like, I can't decide if this is sexy or if this is horrifying or if it's just weird.
Oh,
It's a
it's
very
both. It's both.
confusing vibe. It's all of the above, yeah.
I find it hilarious that the only thing werewolf about them while having this weird ass threesome is they've got fangs. Sturba has pointy ears. I don't think the other they might have the pointy. All of them have pointy ears, but fangs, and there is literally hair glued all over their bodies, and that's it. But
It's great.
all I can think about when I watch this movie is these motherfuckers had to stand there butt ass naked while a makeup team glued hair all over the entirety of their body because this is not suits, like that's their real bodies with hair all over it. How
Yeah.
uncomfortable would you be? Like that would be a terrible moment having glue and hair all over your body while you're standing there before God and everybody. But it's cool. Like I love how Sybil Danning, the hair that covers her body is blonde, just like her natural hair or her real hair.
Yeah.
So she has like blonde hair all over her body. So she's a blonde werewolf, never been seen before. And also, I don't know if you noticed if you
Blonde
not
werewolf,
something I
yeah.
loved about like her accent, like not her like voice accent, but the accent to like her clothing and stuff. Her badass outfit that she wore, like the leather with like the little metal accents or whatever. When she's like threesome werewolf transformation, she's got all the hair on her body, but her nails are like long and pointy, but they're like chrome silver. And I don't know if that's supposed to
Yeah,
be
that was cool.
yeah, I don't know if that's supposed to be like nail polish or if like she's just so much of a badass that she's got like metal claws, but it looks so fucking cool.
Yeah, she's got this whole like werewolf from outer space vibe, like from like down to her, like the outfit that they put her in for most of the movie. She kind of looks like it's like at the end of Rocky Horror when they burst in and they're
Yes, yes.
surprised we're actually aliens. Like she kind of reminds me of that. I basically I would not have been surprised if this movie had ended with a spaceship beaming down and taking the werewolves back to outer space.
You're 100% on the mark. Yeah, her outfit that I love so much is so Rocky Horror. It's ridiculous. And like yeah, when you say alien, like absolutely reminds me of like a 1950s drive-in alien. But it's but
Yeah.
it's so new wave and punk rock sexy. I love it. And that's something I do love about the whole. You were talking about the vibe earlier. The whole feeling of the movie is 100% new wave punk rock, neon drenched, like oozes 80s. And there's a lot of people that I know that are so sick and tired of modern movies being set in the 80s and the whole nostalgia rip. And this kind of showcases of what I love about 80s horror or just 80s in general. Is a lot of, if you look back on a lot of 80s
Mhm.
movies, even though they were 80s movies, there wasn't a lot that was like 100% stone cold 80s about them. They were just like for modern day for that time. But then you have movies like this where it's like the 80s threw up all over that fucking movie. The the new wave music,
Yes.
outfits, the sunglasses, every fucking thing. And that's one of the main things I love about this movie.
Yeah, I love the whole vibe behind it, which kind of leads me to one of the next things I wanted to talk about. I feel like we should talk about just the production of this movie in general. Because I have some fun facts about the production of this that I've been dying to tell you.
Okay, yeah, because I don't know a lot of like hardcore facts about the making of the movie. So yeah, I can't wait to hear these.
Okay, so the first thing is that the Howling as a franchise is actually based. You might already know this part, but it's based on a series of novels
By Gary
called The
Bradner.
Howling and The Howling 2 and The Howling 3. Yes, Gary
Right.
Bradner. Now Gary Brandner actually co-wrote this screenplay. He co-wrote the screenplay for Howling 2, aka Howling 2 Your Sister is a Werewolf, aka how werewolf bitch. Yes, Yerba werewolf bitch. He he co-wrote the screenplay because he was not he was apparently not super happy with the first Howling movie as far as an adaptation of his novel goes.
Hmm.
So he decided to help write this novel. Although he intentionally, I don't really know why, but it's largely unrelated to the novel The Howling 2.
It's
So
100%
even though he wrote the book The Howling 2, yeah, it's totally different. And this is actually the only Howling movie to feature the input of Gary Brander,
right.
which I think is just hilarious. Like the one movie that the author of the original, like the source material, was involved with is this. um so that's one of the main things that kind of blew my mind reading this, because especially when we keep talking about how, like, oh, it kind of seems like whoever wrote this script didn't really know anything about werewolves, or was just kind of forcing in like vampire lore into this
Right.
werewolf story, but it was like written by the guy who wrote the house.
Which is where, it's funny, but also it's not a huge surprise. Now, while I say I don't know a whole lot about the production of this movie, I will say that I knew who Gary Brander was, and I knew that he wrote the books because with the original Howling being my favorite werewolf movie, I have read uh, his first two books. There's of course three of them, but I stopped after the second one, and the reason I stopped after the second one is because the he's 100% right. The first movie is a almost a total departure from the novel. There's a lot of the key things, the whole uh, community of werewolves and stuff like that. That's all the same, but Joe Dante and and the crew, they
Mm-hmm.
definitely went a different route, and in my opinion, they went a different route for the better. It's one of those cases, rare
Mm-hmm.
cases, I should say, where the movie is tenfold better than the book. And then Howling 2, the book is, you're right, 100% completely different from this movie. I hated it. I'm not to start reviewing a book or anything, but I don't the books are not really that great. Um, I didn't know that. I knew that he was
Yeah.
billed as a co-writer, but I didn't know that he actually did co-write it. I thought maybe it was just one of those things where they just gave him credit since he wrote the book. But now that you tell me he co-wrote this fucking thing,
Nope.
makes even less sense now.
Yeah, it really confused me to read that, because normally, especially when something is adapted from a book, that's the biggest complaint, is that, oh, if they had only consulted the author, they would have captured the vibe that they were really going for. But nope, he just fucking wrote this way out of left field script, which I love. I'm glad that he did it. I'm very glad that he didn't stick to the source material just based on what you're saying.
Well, I know the movie was also like he co-wrote it, right?
Yeah, I couldn't quite figure out who co-wrote it with him. I'm not sure if it was Philippe or somebody else.
Nope. I've
But
got the
yeah,
answer.
he at least co-wrote it.
I've got the answer for the other guy. Um, the other writer was Robert Sarno, who only has two credits to his name. this movie and a movie called Decoy from 1995 that starred Robert Patrick from Terminator 2 and Peter Weller from RoboCop. I That's it. That's the only two things he's ever written. So
All right.
yeah, so
Prolific.
prolific as fuck. Let's talk a little bit about the director Felipe Mora. Um, he's an Australian
Yeah.
filmmaker. He's most known for, of course, Howling 2 and Howling 3. He also did another Man into Beast movie, 1982's The Beast Within, which is a fun, a fun little creature feature monster movie. Not the greatest, but it's got some cool transformation moments to that movie. He's still working today. He's dabbling in a few documentaries, but this is what I want to bring up. Most noteworthy, he's doing some documentaries, but this one stuck out to me. He's doing this like the reason it stuck out to me is because I actually read about this some time ago, and I've had it on my radar ever since I want the movie to get done and come out because I've got to see it because this Katie is one of the greatest fucking titles to anything that I've ever read, whether it be
Oh
book or
boy.
movie. The greatest title ever. Are you ready?
I'm
Dracula. All
ready.
right, here we go. Dracula Nazi Hunter. How I Learned to Love Christopher Lee and Drink Atomic Bombs.
Holy shit.
I do not know what the fuck this documentary is about, but based on that title alone, it's been on my radar. I have to fucking see it. That title ranks right up there
Yeah, that sounds incredible.
with the man who killed Adolf Hitler and then Bigfoot or some shit like that.
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued now. I looked through this guy's IMDb and I didn't really recognize a lot of his other movies. But I guess I'm curious, how do you feel, just strictly speaking of this movie, how do you feel about the direction? I mean, sometimes it's hard to separate the editing from the actual like direction.
Right,
But personally, I feel like it the directing isn't that bad, actually. Like I honestly think the editing may have done a disservice to the directing a little bit, because some of the shots are framed pretty. There's like some cool shots in this movie, really cool set design. I think there was a vibe that he was trying to go for, and I don't know if he quite achieved the vibe that he was going for.
right,
But the attempt is there, and the result is, I feel like when you're, as a director, it's like when you release something, it becomes a whole new entity at that point when other people get eyes on it.
right.
Um, so I don't know. What do you think about his approach here?
Um, all right. I I'm trying to figure out where to start because there are so many things that don't make sense to me. All right. we we're going to keep talking about how disjointed and choppy and crazy the fucking editing is of this movie. And while you're right, sometimes the editor can take a movie and completely change the narrative that the director was going for. Um, I don't feel that that is the case for this movie, and the reason is
Hmm.
because of I have seen Philippe Moore's other work, and one of them one of them is a movie that we're going to be doing on our next episode. That's right, folks. We're going to be doing a Howling double feature too, because next episode we're doing Howling 3, The Marsupials. But I don't want to get too far ahead of
Oh,
ourselves.
I have so many thoughts. Yeah, we'll get into it,
Um,
but
but here's the thing: Philippe Mora directed that movie as well. Okay, so he did Howling 2, and then immediately went and did Howling 3, right? So Howling 3 has a completely different editor than Howling 2, but it's still a weird mishmash, choppy, kind of weird mess. Um, and
hmm
this all right. So I'm just mincing words here. I'll just try to spit it out. What doesn't make sense to me is, are you ready for this? We've been
hmm
friends now for what, like 12 years. I think you know me well enough.
Yeah.
You know what my favorite horror movie is of all time, Halloween, right? So
Yes, yes, yes.
John Carpenter's Halloween 1978, one of the greatest horror movies ever made. And what gets me is like that movie has like some of the best of everything. All right. You got some of the best
Mhm.
directing, some of the best cinematography, of course, because fucking the cinematography in Halloween to me is top notch. Um and also something that I
Yes.
think the Halloween's got great is editing. I think Halloween has some really good editing moments. And you're probably wondering why I'm going through all this, correct?
Mhm.
It's because Halloween was edited by the same motherfucker that edited Howling 2.
Shut the fuck up, Matt.
Yeah.
No way. How? How is that? It's okay. Okay, then I recant everything that I just said 5 minutes ago. Clearly, this is a director issue and not an editing issue.
That's why I want you to go first on that one. Yeah, so
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Charles Bornstein, he's been in the business. I mean, that motherfucker I think is still editing movies to this day, if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong. But I just want to throw this out here. So this guy, he edited John Carpenter's Halloween, and then 2 years later, he edited The Fog, another one of my favorite John Carpenter movies. And then, are you ready?
Wow.
Then he went on to edit Howling 2, followed by Return of the Living Dead Part 2, followed by Critters 2, followed by the Robert Englund starring version of Phantom of the Opera. This guy has edited some of my favorite horror movies. So I
What a career.
Yeah, so this is what doesn't make sense to me because there's no way I feel like somewhere along the line, like he gets full credit as the editor, but I feel like he edited a completely different movie, and then Philippe Moore went in there and just fucking hijacked some shit and
Yeah.
ran with
I
it.
mean, at the end of the day, on the hierarchy, like, the editor only has so much input and the director gets final say. So, like, now knowing the other things that he's worked on, I imagine there probably was some butting of heads there on the cutting room.
Well, it's not like, I mean, the Howling, you couldn't even consider this a franchise at this point. I mean, this is 4 year. I mean, it was technically filmed 3 years after the first film, but it came out 4 years later. So there's a little bit of a gap between the first film and this film. And in the '80s, in those days, you had the horror slasher boom going on, where you couldn't take a shit. Like you could watch a movie and you couldn't take a shit before the second one was already out in theaters. Um,
Right.
case
They were cranking them out.
Right, yeah, like case in point, the Friday 13th franchise, your Freddy franchises, they crank those fuckers out. They literally
Mhm.
came out like once a year. So
Yeah.
so you can't really, in 1985, Howling 2 comes out, and you still can't consider this a franchise because nobody knew that this thing would grow hairy legs and keep going. But with that being said, I don't feel like this wasn't like a big studio film. This wasn't like, there wasn't like some top brass sitting at somewhere with their arms crossed saying, "We've got to put this movie out because we got to keep making more of." You know what I'm saying? So I don't feel that there was like
Right.
studio interference so much, because the '80s is, well, especially '80s horror movies, is notorious for the MPAA cutting down like all the good gore and violence and shit. But I don't feel like studio interference was as relevant and big in the '80s, especially on films like this. All studios cared about in this day and age of '80s horror was cranking them out and trying to make back their dime.
Right.
So I don't feel that there was any interference editing wise from studio. If there was any interference, I think it falls directly on Philippe Morris' shoulders. And again, seeing his
Yeah.
other films, like The Beast Within, is competently made. It's a lot better editing than this. But I've also seen Mora's later works, especially again Howling 3, and the editing job on that movie is very
Mhm.
reminiscent, and it's like a different editor. So yeah. we can still sit here and say that this movie was not well edited. And I don't think we should blame that on Charles Bornstein because again, this guy, look,
Yeah.
this was you. Nobody else can see this. You can, but I'm sitting here wearing a Return of Living Dead Part Two T-shirt right now. This guy has edited literally like this is not exaggeration. This guy has edited some of my all-time favorite movies. And yes, even though Howling 2 is
Yeah.
another one of my all-time favorite movies, it's a completely uh, different animal altogether, no
Different
pun intended.
category.
Yeah, different category. So yeah, I'm glad we talked about that because that was actually weird and it's a lot to kind of sink in of when it comes to you know the crew behind the camera, like what the fuck went on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I think
I think, I think Philippe had a strong, I mean, I'm not even going to say strong. He just had a vision. A vision was there. And to me, kind of know, just with that added context of what you just told me, it really seems like he wanted to just don't, as Joe Bob says, don't let the plot get in the way of the story and just
right,
get straight to the boobs and the special effects,
kind of like me.
which I can appreciate.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
well, it's funny. I'm gonna go back to exactly what I said at the start of the show. That this is number one. This is either one of the most poorly written, directed, and edited movies of all time, or number two, this movie was 3 hours long and they had to cut it down. Um, I don't know,
Mhm. Yeah.
but you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me like I know I brought it up earlier. The whole Troll 2 aspect of it being kind of like that cult film that I feel like would be so fun at midnight movies. I'm gonna kind of go back on that again and bring it up that this movie reminds me. It reminds me of a movie with an American cast, directed by someone who doesn't speak English, like Claudio Fragasso did
Yeah.
with Troll 2 and Beyond the Darkness. Because, Fragasso is an Italian filmmaker who he can speak a little bit of English now, but we're talking, 1990 or whatever when Troll 2 was made. Like that motherfucker probably didn't speak a lick of English. And he's out there directing
Mhm.
this American cast, and they don't know what the fuck he's talking about. He don't know what the fuck they're talking about, but roll camera, you know what I'm saying? And Philippe Mora,
Yeah.
he's Australian, so we know he can speak English because they don't speak a different language. But I feel there maybe possibly there was some kind of a language barrier that maybe takes up for.
Yeah.
That's definitely not an excuse for the
Well,
entire movie.
I think I read that he was born in France, like his family's French. And then they moved from there to Australia. So I don't know if English is his first language.
Yeah, but like I still feel that even if it's not like 1984, this wasn't his first movie. I feel like at this point he was speaking.
Right,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? In other words, this movie feels like somebody that was directed by somebody who doesn't speak English, but it wasn't. It just has that kind of feel to it
Right.
because of the acting and stuff. And I don't know. It sounds terrible to say this, and I hate to keep using Troll 2 as a reference, but Troll 2 was a better edited film than this. If and that's kind of
I'll
crazy.
give you that.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy to say. And again, that's why
I mean, look, Troll 2 has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it goes from one thing to the next. And
right.
even though it's kind of weird, you like know what's going on the whole time. Whereas several times in this movie, I had to stop and rewind it and be like, "Wait, what the fuck just happened?" Like, there is a really baffling moment, and maybe I just didn't see what I was supposed to see. Like maybe I looked away for a second and I missed it, but I actually thought for a second that they had like killed off Christopher Lee or turned him into a werewolf like right at the beginning. Right when they get to Transylvania, there is a scene where there's a woman laying down in the road,
The
and
car, the car.
there's a bunch of people around, and they're like, "Oh, yeah," and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you got to help her." And he helps her, she turns into a werewolf, he kills her, and then from my memory, and again, this is just from last night, so I should remember this better, but whatever. From my memory, the next scene is just them in the car, and then they turn around to the back seat, and there's a werewolf in the back seat, and they kill it, and then you don't see Christopher Lee for like 15 more minutes. So I was like, oh, what did he just turn into a werewolf, and now he's dead?
So you did miss something, and it's one of the most. I hate that you missed it because it's one of the most baffling fucking moments in the entire movie. And I can see why you missed it because it's kind of like a blink and you miss it kind of thing. But so yeah, they're all the three our three main characters are riding in the car together. They're in Transylvania. They're going down a back road. There's a bunch of villagers standing in the middle of the road because this woman had been supposedly hit by a car. They so our heroes get out of the car to investigate. The woman's a werewolf. Christopher Lee stabs her in the fucking heart with a titanium stake. And then he looks at them and says, I'm going to I'm or no, he just starts walking. He starts walking towards the woods and they're like, "Where are you
That's right.
where
Wait, I
they're like
remember now.
they're like, "Where the fuck are you going?" And he's like, "I'm heading to the village. I'll meet you there." And he just leaves. And they get back in
That's
the
right.
car and they start driving and then there's a random werewolf in the back seat. But what doesn't make sense is why did he fucking leave on foot when they're all going to the same place anyway? Why would you
He's just like, I gotta go get the Christian Avengers. My boys are
Ah,
just up the road here. I
it
gotta go get them.
it makes no sense, but yeah, it's hilarious, and you're right. If like if you blink and miss it, you would think that Christopher Lee just turned into a fucking werewolf out of nowhere.
Yeah. So yeah, with that, I would love to get into the special effects and the makeup in this movie because I feel like, again, it's, you don't want to get too into comparing it to the original, but that, like we kind of talked about earlier, that is one thing that the original is known for, is its special effects, and there are some practical effects in this movie.
Right.
In my personal opinion, is that they downgraded slightly.
Oh yeah.
Probably my biggest beef is that the werewolves look like people in like a Bigfoot costume. Like they look more like apes than they look like werewolves.
I'm glad to talk about the effects because this is something I definitely wanted to elaborate on. So in my notes that I was writing down last night, I wrote down like in big bold letters FX because I'm split down the middle. I love the effects in this movie. I also hate some of the effects in this movie. The biggest thing I can
Hmm.
say is they range from awful to awesome, and the werewolves are so inconsistent throughout the entire movie. It's one minute you'll have a close up of like Mariana, who's got like this she's got like this kind of a gnarly grizzled prosthetic on her face with some like fucked up werewolf teeth, and she's snarling. And then you'll cut to
Hmm.
a guy in like a really shitty mask, and then you'll cut to like this shoddily made like werewolf puppet head, and
Yeah.
they all look different. Some of them look like a Wolfman type makeup, like from like a lawn chain, like you know what I'm saying, like no snout, they just got, like the hair on their
Yeah.
fangs, and like they're wearing their just wearing regular street clothes, but they just got like hairy faces and fangs. Some of them are like full head to toe, like you said, like Bigfoot, like their bodies are just like fur suits with like prosthetic faces. But those I actually kind of dig. My biggest problem with this entire movie with the effects is the fact that this is called the Howling 2 and there is never a good shot of a werewolf in the entire movie.
Right.
Um like I said, it's
Yeah, most of the werewolves are it's like they're transformation.
right.
And they kind of stay in that phase for most of the movie.
There's the big battle that happens in the woods with Stefan and his Christian Avengers and Ben, and they're fucking they're slinging the consecrated oil and the holy water and the titanium axes and like shit's going down and there's explosions and there's werewolves fucking people up and there's Christian Avengers fucking werewolves up. It's actually such a cool. I love it. I really do. But what pisses me off is
It's great. It's a good sequence.
it's so good, but you never get a good look at any of the werewolves. All you can tell It's some people running around in hairy suits, and that's it.
Yeah.
And like I said, the
Yeah, they did a bit of a disservice to the werewolves themselves in that sense, but I think two of the thing there's two particular, like, prosthetic head effects, not werewolf related, that are really great, and one of them, the first one is when the dwarf gets his eyes exploded.
oh
That
my
was
god, so
fucking gnarly, loved
I
that.
wrote that down. That's probably it's probably my favorite effect of the movie. Just for people like listening, not knowing what the fuck we're talking about. So this is the dwarf guy that I was talking about earlier. This is before he becomes creepy dwarf with the mask and talking with the child voice. But one of like
Yeah, he's actually helping them at
yeah,
first.
he's on their side, and this goes back to the weapons that we were talking about, where they use wax from sacred candles as earplugs. So basically, they're running through the
Mhm.
woods. He trips and falls, and his candle wax earplugs fall out, while Sturba the werewolf bitch is doing some kind of weird ass chant. And the chants, I guess, are fucking him up so bad that it makes his eyeballs literally explode. And like, it's no
It's
exaggeration.
awesome.
Like it's two fucking geysers, like just exploding of blood out of his eyes. It's so fucking gnarly.
It's so great. I really loved that, and then, I kinda briefly mentioned it earlier, but when Stirba, sends her petrified, like, bat demon staff, like, it detaches from the staff and just, like, flies into this guy's face and, like, sticks its weird tail down the guy's throat. There's a really creepy prosthetic head that they used for that, and it's one of those things where it's like, it's obviously fake,
But it looks
but
good.
something about it looks really good, and they do that. There was a particular shot after the guy, I guess he pretty much dies, and the, like, the bat demon, kind of releases him and flies away back to Stirba, and they cut back to this head, and it looks super fake, but what got me is that moment they show his head and they rolled his eyes back.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
his eyes just kind of slowly roll back, and it looked something about the way they made the eyes, it really looked like a real person. Like, I thought for a second that it was a person with makeup on and not a prosthetic head. So that was really impressive to me.
It's funny, and this is where I become super geek when I get to talk about this shit with the effects and stuff. So like, I love, like I said earlier, practical effects. To me, you'll never be able to beat them. And the reason I personally feel like you can never beat practical is when you're watching a movie and you see like the greatest CG of all time. I don't give a fuck how good, how realistic it is. You you can sit there and your brain knows that it's not real. Like it can look at that screen and be like, "Well, that looks great, but I can't physically touch it." However,
Hmm.
you take like you just said, this fake head that is obviously some foam latex and shit, and we our brains know that that shit is fake. However, we also know that that is something that we can touch, that is something physically there, and therefore
Yeah.
I feel like that triggers like a primal thing in our brain, and that's what kind of grosses us out. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, the head is not
Yeah.
super realistic, but it triggers something in our head to be like, ugh. Especially when that fucking bat thing crawls out of the head. Um, yeah,
Oh
I
yeah, it's so gross.
yeah,
And I think, like you said, when you're looking at CG, kind of both with CG and practical effects, you kind of get into this uncanny valley area, especially if you're trying to do like a human head.
right,
But like you said, the difference is that I can see with a practical head that that it's tactile, I can touch it, that it actually is in that environment. And I think it just adds such a level of charm to it, and it just makes it feel more real even when it's obviously fake.
right. Yeah, it's moments like you said with the exploding eyes, and then the priest with the demon. I call it the devil bat. When the devil bat, fucks his world up by sliding his devil tail down his throat, and it's a fucking awesome scene. But like I wrote down earlier, inconsistent. werewolf makeup or just effects all around. And I feel like the reason it's so inconsistent is because there was so many artists working on this movie that there was not like I don't think there was like a set group of artists. I feel like there was like a
Mm.
mishmash of people because the most notable people that worked on this movie was Rob Berman, who's a great effects artist. He did a lot of shit in the 80s and early 90s. He did two movies that I absolutely love, and when audiences hear this, when they're gonna, ask me to turn in my card for loving some of this shit. But he did Class of 1999, which is a great cult classic. But he was also responsible for the makeup in the Mario Brothers movie. Now, yes,
Oh, what?
I love the Mario Brothers movie, and say what you will about that movie, the makeup and effects in that movie was fucking awesome, and Rob Berman did that.
It is, yeah.
Um, but the other most notable name is actually my probably I would say he's probably my favorite effects artist, if not my favorite, definitely like second or third favorite. Steve Johnson. And of course Steve Johnson is responsible for some of the greats. Big Trouble in Little China, Night of the Demons, Species 2. He was responsible
Oh, wow.
for Julie's makeup in Return of the Living Dead 3. Uh Fright Night, and he was the guy who created Slimer for the original Ghostbusters movie.
Holy shit.
So I
So, okay, so that's so cool because it's obvious that the people working on this movie doing the effects knew what they were doing. But it's just like you said, it was just too many cooks in the kitchen, too many different teams maybe working on it and not communicating with each other.
well, a lot of times what will happen in movies, especially ones that's very effects heavy driven, is a lot of times they will hire multiple effects companies to basically be in charge of different moments of the film. Uh, Movies off the top of my head that I can think of is Stuart Gordon's From Beyond. All of the crazy
Mm,
gooey makeups in that movie was handled by multiple effects companies because there's so much different creations that would overwhelm one company, so they would hire multiple companies to be in charge of different iterations of transformations and creatures. And then I think I can't remember what the other movie I was going to say, but like on Phantasm Part Two, which the greatest Phantasm movie of all time. Um, that movie was made by the effects was Mark Shostrom, but Mark Shostrom went out and hired like the big guns to work on it with him. So it happens a lot in movies
right.
where there will be multiple artists on the movie, but the way this one looks and feels is it was random effects guys that were in charge of different things, but nobody knew what the other fucking person was doing. Like, you know what I'm saying? I feel like one person made
Right.
made a werewolf look like this and had no notes handed to him from somebody else that was making a different werewolf. So then we get two completely different looking creatures. Um, and again,
Yeah.
I can't vouch for who did what. And trust me, like I said, the list is very long of artists. I just singled out Rob Berman and Steve Johnson because I love those guys and their work. But if I had to guess, I would almost guess that Steve Johnson probably was in charge, or at least had a lot to do with the devil bat and the head thing,
Hmm.
because the devil bat is kind of like looks like some of his signature work. It's got that like I said, he did Fright Night, and it looks very reminiscent of the Jerry Dandridge vampire bat because he's got a very
Yeah, I was gonna say
yeah
it definitely has a like Fright Night kind of feel to it.
yeah Steve John. Like I said, I love his work, and it's very recognizable. Like I said, he worked on Big Trouble in Little China. All right, so you know the creature that is climbing on the back of Kurt Russell's rig at the very end, like the hairy like monster
Yeah.
thing. It's got, like that big weird like goofy grin. So that's what I
Yeah.
call Steve, like a Steve Johnson a special, because he likes putting like these like exaggerated like detailed like comic booky like grins on a lot of his creatures. And like Amy from Fright Night when she turns into a vampire when she's got that big giant mouth.
Mhm.
Like it looks very similar. So like a lot of people wouldn't be able to, but me being such a diehard Steve Johnson fan, like I can watch a movie and pinpoint, oh, he did that. So I feel like, I'm not going to say that he was in charge of any of the werewolves, but I would say without a doubt that he probably worked on the devil bat thing. And the reason I say that is because this is not the first time we're going to be talking about Steve Johnson doing effects on a Howling movie. Um, yeah,
Ooh, foreshadowing.
yeah, he has done other Howling movies. So not ones that we're going to review right now or in the future, but they will be brought up for sure. Let's just say that the werewolves
Yeah.
he did in those movies look nothing like they do in this one. So, is there anything else you want to talk about with the effects?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. It's really interesting to hear all of these like connections to more well-known movies of the time. So I mean, it definitely you definitely can't say that the people working on this movie, specifically with effects, you can't say that they didn't know what they were doing. They clearly were very great artists. But like you said, there might have just been, just too many different teams, too many cooks in the kitchen. But it's cool to see that they went on to do so many iconic movies after this.
Right, right. So Katie, give me your final epitaph of Howling 2, aka Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf, aka Howling 2, Sturba, Werewolf Bitch.
Yes, I'm gonna consider myself a fan of this movie. I thought it was so much fun. It's so 80s. It's such a time capsule of an era that I think whether you lived through it or not, like because like for example, you lived through the 80s and I didn't. But I think everybody is like longing for this era. You're seeing, like you kind of brought up before, you're seeing all this nostalgia for this time period, and it's because they just don't make movies like they used to make back then. I think it was such a Wild West time for movies, and people were just doing the craziest shit because they could, because studio oversight wasn't as much of a thing as it is now.
And cocaine.
I don't think a movie like this could. Yeah, cocaine, a lot of cocaine. Everyone was on cocaine, and there was no supervision, so they could just do whatever. So you know, a movie like this could only exist now because of people who were fans of movies like this back then. Like a movie like this couldn't just organically happen now in the way that it did in the 80s. So, we've kind of poked fun at it, and it's definitely no it's not going to be screened at Sundance or anything, but it's so fun. It's definitely a popcorn movie, like you said. I think it's worth a watch, especially if you like 80s movies. If you like new wave music, you should definitely just watch this just for the theme song alone, and all the
Absolutely.
music by Babel. It's very fun. So yeah, my final thought is I recommend it. I think you should watch it. I think you should watch it with a group of people. If you're going to do that in 2020, maybe opt for a virtual watch party instead. But it's definitely one that you want to watch with some friends.
Awesome. Yeah, I
And what about you? What are your final thoughts?
I agree on everything. It's definitely. I think this movie, if you're a fan of the first one, I can understand if you don't like not only this one but the rest of them. Um, I'm on the other side of the camp where I love the first one and I love this one, but for completely different reasons. However, I'm also the type of person that I am able to look at things, with an open mind. So that's what I say about this movie. Watch it with an open mind. Have fun with it. Don't expect something serious. Pop some popcorn, crack open a beer, hang with your best bud and your best girl, whatever you want to do, and just fucking have a blast because, like you said, it's nothing but a punk rock new wave, neon infused, titty filled masterpiece of schlock. And I think that's the best way to describe it. It's fun schlock.
Yes. And with that, we've not only made it to the end, but we've made it to your favorite part of our show. And I have a feeling I know what your answer is going to be, but Matt, where does the Howling 2, aka the Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf, aka Stirba Werewolf Bitch, rank on the TNA meter?
Oh, the TNA meter. This motherfucker, like our TNA meter only goes to 10, and this is our first show, and we're coming out fucking swinging because I am giving this motherfucker 17 stars out of 10 on the TNA meter. And you might ask yourself, "Matt, why are you giving it such a specific number? Why 17?" Well, I'll tell you why. Because ladies and gentlemen, we have talked about how the Babel song plays repeatedly throughout this movie. We have talked about the crazy editing, but nothing can prepare you for the end credits of this goddamn movie, where they play the song by Babel again in its entirety, intermixed with the same shot of Sybil Danning ripping off her shirt to go topless 17 fucking times. It is the most
17 times.
hilarious shit I have ever seen. And I love how it's the same shot. It's not like a shot from different angles. It's
It's
literally
so good.
it's literally the same shot of her ripping open her dress, exposing her awesome tits, and then it'll cut to a random reaction shot from a different character that's not even in that scene. And it's glorious. So if you hate the movie, all I can say is just stick around for the end credits because the end credits literally kind of makes it all worth it. It's the music.
It's like a movie. It's like a music video super cut of the movie.
It
It's like
is.
all the hits from the last hour and a half cut together, and then every now and then it's just that same with that really loud, like comically loud, like rip sound effect as
Yes.
she's taking her
Yeah,
top off.
the ripping sound as she opens up her dress or her cloak or whatever to expose her boobs. It's so glorious, and it's funny because like I mentioned earlier how when the movie was going off, I was sitting in my recliner with my beer, bobbing my head to the music. I had like the goofiest grin on my face every time that she would rip it open because it's like you just said this movie could not consciously be made today without it being referenced.
No,
Like as it without it being like like a
absolutely not.
homage.
Yeah.
Because you know me just as well as any of my friends know me. I love making serious horror movies, but I also love making like silly shit. And this movie is something that I would make, but I don't even know if I have the brain power to come up with some of this crazy shit. Like this ending's like I would never be able to cook up something that amazing. So that's my final
Yeah,
thought. And
it's definitely a baffling end sequence, but it just wraps it up beautifully. It's perfect. It's a perfect way to end it.
so I guess that's pretty much it on my end. Do you have anything left to say on Howling 2, aka Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf, aka Howling 2, Sturba, a werewolf bitch?
No more additional thoughts. I did just want to say that if you've gotten this far and you haven't seen this movie, I would like to let you know that it is streaming on Amazon Prime. So if you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you can watch it. It's probably elsewhere online if you look hard enough, but that is the most mainstream way to access it at this point. So definitely give it a watch.
Awesome. Well, that's all we have for this episode of Video Express. We want to thank our sponsor, Troma. Be sure to subscribe to Troma now at watch.troma.com and get your first month for free. Also, be on the lookout for Troma's latest film, directed by Lloyd the Man Kaufman himself. Hashtag Shakespeare's Shitstorm. Troma, 46 years of disrupting media.
Yeah, and we want to thank anyone who is listening to our show tonight. This is our first episode, so hopefully we can only go up from here. So thank you again for hanging out with us at the video store.
Yep. Thanks all our friends out there who is listening to us, and we hope you tune into our next episode. Again, spoilers. Next episode is going to be Howling 3: The Marsupials. So look fun for more hairy werewolf fun. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, just remember, please be kind, rewind, but most importantly, just be kind. I'm Matt,
And I'm Katie.
and we'll catch you on the next episode of Video Express.